Like a woman 43 weeks pregnant, a book past its due date, or long needed visit between friends, this is Overdue with the Slut and the Prude.
A monthly feminist podcast that highlights the beauties of libraries while discussing everything from politics to pop culture and whatever nonsense pops into our heads. Today we are coming from Central Library. Central Library is the largest library in Mississauga and offers a number of programs and services including 3D printing, Wi-Fi meeting rooms for rent, assistance for newcomers, and community outreach open window hub. It also has very significant importance for me personally and for us.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you were around for last week, we met in a library, so having a third host in the library is really important to us. So hopefully we'll get to visit some more libraries in the area, but right now this is our second library, though my second visit to the library because somebody got very lost that first week because Mississauga likes to name all their libraries Central Library.
So what happened was we had planned to meet at a library called Burnhamthorpe Library. And Burnhamthorpe Library is located on Dixon Road, and Central Library is located on Burnhamthorpe Road West.
Yep.
So poor Emma, being new to Mississauga, got very confused, which is fair.
Yep, I got to the library like 15 minutes early, text Nora like, okay, I'm outside by the cafe, like I'll meet you, I'll wait for you here, and we'll figure it out from there. And Nora was like, what do you mean a cafe? There's no cafe.
I was already there, and I came out, and I'm looking around, I'm like, where are you?
And then I said, I'm on the first floor, the ground floor.
There's only one floor at Burnhamthorpe Library.
Yep, and we quickly realized, well, I don't even think it was that quickly. It took us a little while to realize I was at the wrong library.
Yeah.
But you figured it out first.
Because I asked, you're at Burnhamthorpe, right? Yeah. Central. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Nope.
So that was the disastrous start to the first Overdue podcast. And now we almost had a disastrous second episode because it's already 15 minutes after we should have been meeting.
And Central Library actually has very strict rules. If you reserve a room and you're not there by 15 minutes, they will cancel it.
That's very strict.
Yeah. It's a little wonky because you actually have to reserve in person. So I was here at 9 o'clock to reserve for 12.
Whoa.
Because I wanted to make sure that we had this room.
Yeah. That's
and then, of course, there were
weird
people in this room, so they tried to steal our room. So.
Yeah, they tried to say, oh, we booked it, but they booked it for 4 o'clock, not 12 o'clock.
Lots of confusion in this library.
I wonder why you have to book it in person.
I don't know. It's the only library you have to do that.
Because it would make more sense, I feel like, to book it online. It's a nice system. It's all organized. Everyone's all neat and tidy, and everything's wrapped up nicely. But
I guess they like their ticket system, and it works. The ticket system does work. It would help today.
Yeah.
Compare tickets and like, no, you guys are 4. We're 12. We can help you. Get out.
Get out.
Well, we were nicer than that, just because we're nicer people. But, you know.
Well, I think I'm just more too shy to do aggression from the beginning. It usually takes a couple of times for me to get okay. But yeah, okay. So how has your month been? It's been about a month since we last met.
It's good. Before we get into that, I just actually wanted to say that Central actually holds importance for me personally. Because this was actually my library growing up.
Oh!
So this is where I got my first library card.
That's so cute.
And I would come every weekend with my mom because she was an avid reader. Now she reads on her tablet, so that doesn't count. But she used to be an avid book reader. And so we'd come every weekend and I would spend all afternoon downstairs in the children's area.
That is so cute. This is a really nice library to have as your home library. Like, I'm sure it's changed over the years. Like, I'm sure they didn't have 3D printers just chilling out in the main floor. But this is a nice library. I grew up, my first library card was when I used to live in Canada. I used to live in Guildwood in Scarborough. And so it was a 1 floor, probably, like, I feel like the library was barely bigger than this room. Like, it was a very small library. And they had, like, a tiny little corner that was, like, the kids' corner. And that was my first... that I can remember my first library card. But this is a sweet library.
You have a whole floor to kids' books. And there's a lighthouse that you can sit and read.
That's so cute.
I sat in there so many times. Or
did you have to fight other kids for it?
And if you were in there too long, you'd come and be like, sorry, you have to get out. Other people want to sit in here and read. And I'm like, no.
I haven't finished my book yet. I read so much as a kid. You know those like summer library competitions? You get the stickers for every so many books you read. I used to fill them out every year, like fill the whole thing, because I was just like voracious. Like you couldn't stop me from reading. And I was reading above my age level too, so I was always like reading chapter books and like, which for those kids' summer library things, you end up filling them really fast because it's like a page number thing, not like a whole book thing. So it's like if I read a chapter book, I got like 6 stickers.
Yeah. Now I have a new library by my house, which is not as nice as this one.
No.
And they're like selling half off their merchandise.
What?
I don't know what's going on with them, but like half the shelves are empty. It's this tiny 1-floor library.
Oh no.
And it's new. It's opened early 2000s, so when I started middle school. So I don't know why they're doing that, but
I mean, there's all the funding cuts happening right now to libraries.
that's true.
But that's weird.
It's weird.
It reminds me of Nelly, where we just had all these books that we were just, oh, those are going to the book sale.
Yeah, but like these, like their shelves are bare. You walk in and it's like nothing. They're not even trying to hide the fact that there's no books in there. It's just empty.
Have you talked to them and asked them why?
I haven't. I should. I haven't been in there in so long. Probably why. I haven't been to a library in so long.
I know. I was thinking the other day that I might, because I think I can swing, because I live in Oakville right now, so I think I could swing that I'm a temporary resident of Oakville, because I have a couple pieces of mail with the address that I'm living at on. So I feel like if I went to them and was like, hey, I'm just a temporary resident, I want a library card, I wonder if they would give me one. They should, because it's like, I know the whole point is like you pay taxes in that area. That's why you get a library card for free, because like it's or like $1 or $2, whatever it is, to get a library card. But I just miss being in a library. Like I just miss sitting and reading and walking through the books. And it's like the only place, when you think about it, in a city that you're encouraged to loiter and not spend money.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because like you can't do that at a bar. You can't do that at like any kind of establishment. You can't even do that at a coffee shop.
No.
Like you can't just go to like a Starbucks or Tim Hortons or whatever and not buy anything and stay for more than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like there's signs at the Starbucks by my grandparents' house. It's like, please don't loiter for more than 15 minutes. That's even if you've bought a drink or whatever you've bought. So a library is the only place that encourages you to stay without having to spend money. So it's so important, especially if you're broke, which is what I am, or if you just don't have, even if you don't have like a stable home life, like even if you have a house, like you rent somewhere, but it's not very good, like a library is important as an escape for you to just go sit, because there's some comfy chairs, there's some tables, there's some whatever, and it encourages you to learn too for free.
They provide so many resources, like things for newcomers to small business owners, everything. Libraries are important.
They are, and I feel like they're the first thing to lose funding. Like the arts and libraries, which I guess they fall into the same category. It's weird. I wonder, it'd be interesting to find out why your library is losing its books.
They're selling them off. They were actually really cheap. You can get like for $1.
Oh.
So part of me's like, oh, hey, I want this book for $1, but the other side's like, well, what am I supposed to read when I come?
Yeah, or like, is it just not going to be a library anymore?
Maybe not. Which is kind of weird, because why would you build a whole community center with that and then not keep it around?
Is it part of the Mississauga library?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
And it's like right by 2 schools, so it's not like it's not in need.
Yeah, that's weird.
There's a middle school and an elementary school and a Catholic with them.
Oh, well, I mean, that alone should be enough to keep it around. On the note of the libraries, McLean's just came out with their concise, like, elections you know how every time the election comes around, they do their whole, like, the platform guide. So they'll take each platform and they'll write exactly what each party is saying. They just came out with it, and I read it recently. Nothing about libraries in anybody's thing. There are a lot about the arts, and, like, there's a lot of the parties that want to reestablish the arts, but there's not a ton about libraries.
That's sad.
Actually, none about libraries.
That's sad.
Just arts. Yeah, there's, like, one section on arts and culture, and go figure, the Liberal and the Conservatives don't have anything. But the NDP and the Green Party do have a lot.
You would think it's because there isn't a need for libraries, but that isn't the case. Because I came this morning at 9 o'clock, and I actually came a little bit before 9, and there was, like, a huge group of people waiting outside. And I was actually really surprised. I'm like, I'm going to be looking a fool sitting outside in front of the library by myself. And then I wasn't. There was, like, so many people. And there usually are so many people waiting to actually get into a library before it even opens. So clearly it's serving people.
But you know who it's not serving? The rich 1%. Right? Because, like, people who have enough room in their home for, like, an office, like a separate office space, or who have a home, or who, like, work regular full-time hours, they have no need for a space like this, right? They can buy all the books they want. They can access internet whenever they want. They usually have a space that's calm if they need to do, like, office type work. And so they don't need libraries. Like, they don't see the need for it. But, like, this is a space that people would come to look for jobs. If they don't have internet, this is where they would come. I know that when I was younger, we didn't have internet in my house. So we'd come, well, this was, like, when internet wasn't, like, in everybody's home. Yeah. But it was always in libraries. And so I would come and I would do my schoolwork, my research for my schoolwork. This was before you needed internet entirely, but it was still, like, never mind the fact that it's just, like, a nice space to be in. So, yeah, it's interesting that it's not more important, especially because currently in Ontario, the Premier cut funding specifically to libraries. Like, he worded it as libraries, right? So, I don't know. It's interesting that they're not more important.
And they're not seen as much.
They're not seen. They're so important. They're not seen as it. Especially because it would save money, so much money. Because it's where, like, a lot of community services run out of libraries. And you'd think you'd want people not loitering on the streets. Yeah. And teenagers not getting into teenage trouble. Because, like, when I was walking in here, they have a big sign that's, like, free, safe, accessible, drop-in after-school program for youth aged, like, I don't know what the sign said, but it was up to, like, 17 or 18. It's like, we need more stuff like that. We need more places that parents who are working can say, hey, just go to the library. They probably have snacks.
Yeah. And we have all these resources for fitness. I saw this fitness chair thing.
What?
It was just a poster. I was like, it's just skimming it. And I'm like, some fitness chair program that they were offering in October. And I'm like, okay.
Like, you sit in your chair and you do a workout?
Things to, like, stretch and help you while you're at your desk.
Oh.
Because, everyone's sitting these days, including us right
True.
now.
Yeah, that's true. On that note, my partner and I are actually going to get a standing desk. Because so obviously he's back in school, so he's sitting down at a desk all the time. And I like doing a lot of, like, creative stuff, drawing, writing, whatever. So I sit down on a desk a lot. To be fair, I work outside 5 days a week, so, like, I don't necessarily need to get my, like, 3 times 60 or 4 times 60, whatever, because I get it. I get it in spades, literally spades. But we decided that it was probably a good idea to get a standing desk so that when we are sitting down, we have the option to, like, stand up and stretch and do stuff like that. So we're kind of excited about that. That's very adult. Just, like, I'm so excited to get a new desk. We're only going to get a crank one. Like, we're not going to spend the extra money on getting an electric one, but it'd be kind of cool.
That would be cool. I was watching this news thing. They were talking to an author, and she writes for a living, so she's the one sitting, and so she has a treadmill desk.
Oh, I've heard of those.
That was cool.
I've seen ones that don't use electricity
Yeah.
either. They just they use the momentum of your walking to power it. It's like weighted rollers. So once you get them moving, it moves smoother. And it's when you stop that it's harder to make it move again. So that's cool. I've seen ones that actually generate power too.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they're more expensive, but like there's talk of, like, of course it's in LA, but there's talk of a gym opening with just equipment that generates power.
That is so LA.
It's so LA. It's so LA, but they're like ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, and I feel like they're the, like, if we could have an experimental plot of land, I feel like that's the experimental plot of land for a lot of green stuff and a lot of, like, people would call it hippie, but like they have all the, like, a lot of the vegan foods seem to come out of there, or the vegan trends, a lot of the, like, green energy things. I feel like I've heard a lot about, like, when people are starting these initiatives, they're like, we're going to go to LA first. Because it's where all the rich people who can afford to spend and try these trends live. I think that's probably the worst thing about the environmental movement, is that it starts out so expensive. And it starts out so it's only accessible by those who have the extra time, money, and energy to try things. And then I don't know how effective it is, because if they decide it's not worth it, it kind of just drops off. But what can you do?
So your month was busy?
Yeah, it was. So so my contract ended and got renewed, which is good, but it's only until November 28th, whatever the, like, last Friday in November is, which is terrifying. But makes sense, because obviously I work in, like, the horticulture, outdoor, whatever, so when the snow hits, there's not a lot I can do, at least in this aspect of the environmental genre of work. That's not that word, but whatever. So it's great because I still have work, which is nice, but it's terrifying because it means that I'm still in that, like, limbo of, well, I have a job, but the hours could drop at any moment, and I don't know what I'm doing after November. So that's a little stressful. And then, not to go into too much vivid detail, but the living arrangement for Kyle and I is not ideal. It's highly stressful. It puts a lot of strain on, not our relationship necessarily, because we've set up so that we have a very strong relationship, but just on us, like, mentally, and, like, just mental health wise, it's not a good place for us to be, but we really can't afford to live alone. Because in Oakville, which is just one of the most expensive places in the GTA, other than Toronto, a bachelor apartment with less than, like, I feel like it's less than 1,000 square feet of living space is $1,100 plus utilities. And you can't find them because people see, as soon as they come up for rent, they're gone, because people are like, they want these bachelor apartments. And we don't have any friends right now, or people we know, who are looking to move. Which makes sense. Like, in this economy, it makes more sense to live with your families. But we can't. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to be honest. So it's been just a little, like, stressful.
So, I was actually looking at something, and I wasn't not ignoring you.
No, for sure.
It reminded me because I was using this portal when I was looking for work that I think might be helpful for you. It's called Charityville, or Charity Village. And they don't have many, but they have, like, they kind of categorize it into, like, non-profit and profit jobs. And they segregate it into, like, different sections. So, like, industries. So, like, if you put an environment, and then you can, like, look around and see if there's anything that's of interest to you. I don't know if it'd be a lot of, like, actually in the ground kind of environmental jobs. It'd probably be a lot of, like, admin
feel like at this point, anything. Because, like, I can work on my career later. Right now, bills need to be paid. But no, that works. I'd seen it. So I'd seen this logo before.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what it was, so I didn't want to trust it. But now that you've told me about it, maybe I'll take a look at it. Cause
it's actually how I got my volunteer position at the walk-in clinic. And it's actually
okay.
super different.
Okay, I will definitely use that later then, because that...
And if you create an account with them, they give you like these free webinar series as well. It's just like a whole bunch of interesting things like psychological well-being in the workplace. How do you install that? How do you write proposals and things like that?
Oh, that's helpful. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because, yeah, I've been asking a bunch of people, and I have a friend who's trying to get me a job, but he doesn't want my resume, he wants a list of skills. That's what I thought, too, but I guess he just doesn't want the fluff. He wants just, like, strictly what can I and can't I do. Like, none of the, like, effective communicator and stuff like that. Like, he knows that. He wants more just, like, for instance, I learned how to drive a tractor this week. And I know how to use...
You're great with hose.
And I'm great with hose. Except it ruined my wrist. I don't know if I told you. I was on...
I sprained that.
Yeah, I was on modified work because I hoed too much. So that's better. I'm fine now. The price of hoeing, you know.
It ain't easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. What can you do? Yeah. What can you do? But yeah, so okay, I'll look at that because that'll be good. Maybe that'll help de-stress some.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because it's adult stuff, right? It's like once you leave school, like adulting. Once you leave school, it's all the stuff that no one teaches you. No one tells you. I mean, they do give you resources into like how to find a job and like how to write a good resume and like all that kind of stuff. They don't really support you or get you ready for the time period when you might not find one.
Yeah.
Like they don't say, oh, there's going to be a chance that it's going to be hard to find a job. They're just like, go get it. Go pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is physically impossible.
Right. That's
not how that works. But it's very interesting. And like navigating, I feel like there's a whole new like experience where people are living with their families for longer. Like obviously some communities already did that. Like some communities already lived with their grandmother, mother, all in the same house, right? But I feel like all of a sudden it's happening across communities that didn't have it before. And I think it's causing a lot more strife than people think. Because like I grew up with my grandparents in the house with me when I was very young. But now living with Kyle's dad, it's like it's a completely different thing. And not even because like I don't feel like I belong, but just because I feel like he doesn't want that. Not really. He is giving us like an out, obviously, because like we wouldn't be able to afford to live anywhere. But I feel like in his heart, he's like, you should be out already. You shouldn't be here. Why are you still here? And I feel like that makes it very interesting. Are you seeing something similar? Like there's more people living at home now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like a topic of conversation for like lots of news talk stations and all that. It's always like, and the way they frame it, it's so disheartening. It's just like this failure of society and failure of the generation because they're sticking around and they're mooching off their parents. And And it's just, I feel like part of the problem is just the way in which we look at the situation and we frame the values of our culture.
Yeah.
It's very individualistic in that, I don't know why, but like at 18, you're like, you're an adult, you're on your own, go off and be, you know, fly or fail. I'm just like, why?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I never want my kids to feel like at 18 they just have to get out.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is also that there's a lot of like missed communication and a lot of like there's a lot of rhetoric around the fact that generations are so vastly different to each other, and they are. But at the end of the day, they have core values that everybody wants. They want their kids to succeed. They want to be healthy. They want to have money left in the bank at the end of the month. And they want to be able to pursue their hobbies. I feel like everybody, no matter what age you are, no matter where you're coming from, those are the things you want. And there's a lot of rhetoric, whether it's political or just like that like idea that passes between people. Like, it doesn't matter what you are. Like, you know how nursery rhymes, it doesn't matter if you didn't teach your kids suddenly know the nursery rhymes you did as a kid because they just like get passed around. There's this idea that, well, you'll never be able to get along with like your grandparents or your parents because they just are so different. They have such different values, and like this generation is so liberal and like all that kind of stuff, right? I feel like that also stops it because like right around the teenage age, like parents stop talking to kids, and like in general it's just a show of like an unhealthy family relationship. Because I feel like there's way more that you can do with your families if you guys just sat down and talked about it for 2 seconds.
That's true. I feel like the differences that we're seeing are not necessarily in our values, but the way in which we kind of like go about achieving our goals and our dreams. Because I feel like the core dreams and all the things that you were mentioning, they're still the same, but the way in which we go about approaching them is different, and so we get caught up in the differences and being like, that's not the way we did in our generation, like youngsters, and you know, and it's just like, it's just a different way, but it's still the same thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like it's yeah, I feel like we just do that. And there's the power dynamic of the house, right? So there's the older generation who owns their home most of the time, who've now had their kids, maybe even have grandkids, like whatever. And they, of course, would welcome people to stay in their home. They love their families, whatever. But there's this power dynamic of like, well, it's their home, their rules kind of thing. Whereas if any community, it should be a shared set of rules that everyone can agree on, right? Obviously, if the people own the home, they probably should get final say on what happens there. But also, if you're going to invite an extension of your family, that should be a conversation that you have. And like, it should never be my house, my rules. It should always be, please do this because of this, right? Like the whole my house, my rules thing never works. Never works for anybody. All it does is make people not want to stay there. All it does is make people angry. Whereas if you say, hey, don't turn on the lights if you come home after 11. Not because like they hate you and they don't want you out because you have a curfew, but because maybe they're sensitive sleepers. Maybe the dogs bark at 11. Maybe they've had complaints about it. Like, whatever. Like, they should explain it, not just like, that's the rule. And I feel like that happens a lot when, especially if families move out and then move back in together. I feel like that causes a lot of tension. Because the people who've moved out have already done their own thing, made their own comfort levels, figured out how they like to live. And then you're trying to move back in. Happens a lot with students. Because they'll leave home, go figure out life a little bit, and then they're trying to find a job, trying to find a place to rent, so they move back in with their parents. Maybe the grandparents have moved in because they're no longer able to live alone. And then that's 3 sets of people with different living preferences who probably, as far as my experience goes, don't sit down and have a conversation about like what is acceptable for everybody. And I feel like that's so like juvenile, which is so silly, but it's so juvenile that like people just be like, it's fine, we'll be fine, we can just move in together.
I feel like that's partly because of the individualistic culture that we live in. There's like there's a lot of I don't know what to call it. It's just, you know, in a collectivistic culture, there's more of like communal and more of talking and sharing. Whereas like, individualistic, it's just very you really don't care about others.
No.
And that kind of resonates with the idea of like, you know, you have to respect your elders just because they're older than you.
Yeah.
And so then your parents move back in, and it's like, well, I respect mom and dad because they're mom and dad, but it's now my house. And so who respects me? And then I have to respect the kids because the kids are, you know, my kids.
Growing
like,
individuals.
Yeah, exactly. But then kids are like, technically they're adults and they kind of like learned for themselves and kind of got used to their own ways and learned how to do things. And so it's like, as your child, this idea of like, I don't necessarily need to respect you because like you're mine, and this the idea of like, well, I have to respect you because you're an adult.
Yeah.
And it's just like all these like individualistic things that doesn't really work in a communal living situation.
Yeah, it all goes back to communication, doesn't it? I feel like if generations communicated more with each other, we wouldn't have such an issue when it comes to like the fact that, you know, there's a climate strike happened yesterday, right? I feel like there's a lot of miscommunication about like what that actually means and what people actually want from that.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to this, who would have thought communication? If people communicated, maybe we would have a little bit more function in society and each other. And it is that hard struggle of like, who makes the rules in the house? Who gets to decide on things if people are a little uncertain?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to show that we've lost the community aspect of human nature. Because at the end of the day, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, is absolutely true. Back before, so just after we were, say, hunter-gatherers and like movers or nomadic society, we became an agricultural society where we grew up in close communities where people knew each other, where people traded for their food, traded services for product, and traded maybe product for product, whatever. We lived in a close-knit community where you could have the grandparents look after the children, and the parents could go and do whatever they needed to do. The children would grow up to learn and be a part of the community. The grandparents would be taken care of by the community. And we've lost a lot of that. There's a lot of people think that that's a new thing, like community is new. But they're finding fossil records, fossil records of ancient people, so ancient humans, who would have had a ton of disabilities, wouldn't have been able to walk by themselves, would have probably been very, like, couldn't use dexterous, like, didn't, like, maybe their hands were malformed or whatever, and they lived into their 30s and 40s, which, if community was new, they wouldn't have survived, because the community wouldn't have helped them. But we have this thing of, like, you're only valid in a community if you can do something, if you provide a service, if you can build on it. But these are ancient humans who didn't have like settlements, and we're finding that people would have lived into their 30s and 40s who would not have been able to hunt and gather, who would not have been able to weave baskets. So the idea that community is new and we need to like learn it because it's new and it's not common is absolutely false. It has been around for ages. It's just that because of individualized society, we've lost a lot of that focus. And it's hard because you have to really want it. And this idea that like 18, you're done, get out of my house, don't come back. If you come back, you're a failure. Has really lost a lot of that, like. And like faith, I don't know if I could go to my parents and be like, hey, I'm struggling.
I never understood why being homeless or living out of your car and struggling to make ends meet and suffering to survive was always seen as the marker of adulthood, as opposed to somebody who was living with their parents but was working and paying their own bills, but you know, still at home and kind of like being helped by their parents. Why is that not seen as adulthood? And it just, I never understood why suffering had to be seen as the marker. Like, only great achievement comes from suffering.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, or like, why do we like validate and kind of like make it almost a pedestal that students are eating pot noodles every night and like getting 5 hours of sleep and like just that kind of stuff. Like, why is that success? Like, why is that, oh, you're such a good student? Like, we almost romanticize this, like, oh, I'm eating craft dinner every meal because that's all I can afford. And like, oh yeah, I pull all-nighters all the time because I'm so stressed and I can't get my work done. Like, why do we romanticize those things?
Why do we applaud that? they're like, well, if you really wanted it, you should be suffering for it. But do we have to?
Should we have to?
Yeah, should we? Why can't we live in a world where we're all helping each other to succeed?
Mm-hmm.
We're not absolutely miserable like 90% of our time.
And, well, look at that. It's the feminist agenda. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that anybody should have to feel like they can't ask for help. And it really is, it probably all comes back to the fact that anybody who's in power, so anyone who's privileged, because they don't feel those struggles, or they don't have to feel those struggles, they assume that others aren't working hard enough. Yeah. Right? They assume that, like, oh, well, I did it. I didn't. Like, I just worked hard. You're obviously not working hard enough. Forgetting the fact that, like, privilege plays a part. Like, because there was a time when I was in school that I could only afford flour and yeast. And so I was making these little pitas, and that's what I would eat, because I couldn't afford anything else. I couldn't afford eggs. I couldn't afford milk. I couldn't afford, like, I could afford frozen, like, vegetables, like, or canned vegetables, but only if they were on sale. And, like, they're already, like, what, 50 cents? Like, depending on where you go, I had to wait for them to be on sale to be able to afford them. And I didn't ask for help because I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't ask my mom. I felt like I couldn't ask my grandparents. I felt like I couldn't ask the food bank at my school because I felt like that was like an admittance of failure. It's like, this is just what students do. You just make do. You just afford what you can. And it's so like, when did that start?
It reminds me of Sarah from Nelly.
Oh, yeah.
She worked 3 part-time jobs, was an international student,
Yep.
was on her own, and a full-time student.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are the people that, you know, free tuition would have helped tremendously. It's not like she was like money prepping. It's not like she was lazy. She put in the effort. She was smart as hell. She had a degree in math or statistics.
Yeah, something like that.
So she was a hard worker. She knew how to buckle down and do shit. But
Yeah.
it's like she was struggling so hard because of the system. It's like you had to do everything for yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember I was listening to like a news talk radio station, and some guy was saying, I had to take the year off because I don't have the money for school.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting to get like $1,000 from OSAP.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting that.
Yeah.
And now I'm screwed. And they're all everybody was commenting like, oh, big boo-hoo to him, and I'm just like, what?
What is this?
And it's like, why do you expect to get things for free, and why aren't you expecting to work? And it's like, how do you know he wasn't working?
Yeah.
Like, he had a summer. How do you know he wasn't busting his ass trying to get money and still came up short?
Mm-hmm.
And was expecting or hoping that OSAP and the government that he pays into would actually kind of help him out, and they didn't. So they kind of failed him in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're all saying, well, boo-hoo to him. Really?
Yeah. And those are the same people that will be like, well, if you didn't eat avocado toast, or if you didn't get a Starbucks once a day, well, that's like $100 you could have saved a month if you didn't get your Starbucks once a day. And it's like, why do people have to go without? Like, why should people go without? Because $100, say, a month, in the grand scheme of things, when you talk about tuition and rent, are not going to make a difference unless that's all you're missing, right? But a lot of the time, people aren't just missing $100; they're missing like $500, and they're going to have to get a second part-time job. And sometimes all people have to give them hope is that Starbucks once a day with those baristas who are really nice, who know their name, who know their order, who are worried if they don't come in because they come at the same time every day, right? And it's like, I don't get why this mentality of like, we have all these commodities, we have all these nice things, but the nice things are only for people who like suffer for them, or only for people who don't have to suffer for them. Like, where did that come from? I don't think if somebody wants a Starbucks once a day because that's what makes them happy and that's what makes them feel like a part of society, I don't think that's a big deal. But people make it such a big deal.
It's funny the things that we expect and feel like are right, and things that we feel like are privileges. Like, education apparently is a privilege, but childcare, that's my right. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, people are so up in arms with the fact that they're not getting, like, there's there's not enough adequate childcare and all those issues, and it's like, but who said having a baby was your right? Just because you can biologically do that, who said you have to? And there's a lot of people who are going out there who are struggling to make ends meet as it is, and are still either choosing to get pregnant or not being careful enough and getting pregnant. And we're all like, yes, let's give them money, take it all, you need it, that's your right. But it's like, I want education, I want to better myself, I want to grow the economy and help everything and all that. It's like, no, that's privilege. You have to earn that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, because children should be cared for. That shouldn't be a question. But education should also be a priority. But the problem then is that no one wants to listen to the educated, because then they feel like they're privileged. You're privileged, you don't understand. And it's like,
it's weird. It's like, if you don't have the money to go to school, then you don't get to go to school. That's just what it is. But if you don't have the money for kids, we'll help you. It's okay.
Yeah, it's like, they should be equally as important. Because also, if you educate people, they're probably going to have less children. Or if they don't have less children, if they're educated, they're going to be able to afford those children.
And properly care for those children.
But yeah, I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense where our priorities are. It's like, I agree, we need to have childcare that's affordable.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree that no one's children should go without, like, parents shouldn't be scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to pay for their children so they can go to work. Like, that shouldn't happen. But also, we need better access to, well, just sexual health care, full stop, and education. Because if you educate somebody, they're not going to need as much sexual health care, because they're going to know. They're going to be like, oh, okay, well, these are things that are important. This is how I not get pregnant. This is how I not get disease. This is how I handle myself if I do get disease. But they're not. They're not a priority. And these are things, so I don't know if we talked about it last week, but some things have become partisan issues in the government, which essentially means that something like the environment has become something only liberals talk about, liberals or the Green Party. And if someone in, say, the Conservative Party decided to talk about the environment, well, that's liberals. That's a liberal topic. Only liberals care about the environment. And it's like and childcare, like looking after children, has also become partisan. Not everyone cares about it. Or, oh, only conservatives think about childcare. What do you, like, they want all the children, they want all the babies. And it's like, that shouldn't be the case.
That's interesting, because Andrew Scheer, the leader of the Conservative Party, was the only leader who was not taking part in environmental activity yesterday. And he was asked about it, and he was like, well, I don't need to take part in that, because I'd rather stand here and tell you what I'm going to do. But it's like, telling us what you think and actually getting in there and showing that you actually care are two different things. And like, if you wanted to make us believe that you actually genuinely cared about environmental things, you'd be in there getting in with the groups. And, talking about the issues, not just standing out some business and being like, oh, well, here's my platform for environmental things. Like, no.
Or how about listening to what the people need?
Yes. Listening. We need more listening.
We do need more listening.
In the world in general, we just need to listen. We need to
communication. It all goes back to that. And I think that people also can get really funny about what's a valid form of communication. Because that's always a contentious topic. Some people don't think that media is a valid form of communication. And some people think it's the only valid form. So it's all very, very mixed up.
So I just noticed your sticker.
Which one?
Character.
Oh, yeah. It's for those listening, it's a picture of Charizard from Pokemon, and it says, "Dying builds character." And I believe it's from a webcomic that this artist is a part of, but I saw the sticker, and all I could think of was, oh, how true that is. And it's funny, that's ironic for our conversation. It shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't think that, like, people who are like, oh, well, I got out of I scraped through university eating Pop-Tarts and mac and cheese, and I built character, and that's why I deserve a job, and you don't. It's like, that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, it's this weird idea that, like, only people who have been through trauma are, like, really living surviving. It's like you don't know anything if you haven't gone through that. And I remember I was talking to somebody, and it started because I had watched a new episode of Arthur. I love Arthur. I'll always love Arthur. And Molly from the Tough Customers, she's considered a bully.
Okay.
Because Binky and the whole group are
Yeah.
considered the bullies.
Yeah.
And she has a little brother who's about the same age as Arthur's younger sister, DW. And she was noticing her younger brother was actually starting to bully other kids. And she didn't like that. And her brother's like, well, you do it, so why is it wrong that I do it? And then she realized, like, I mean, it's hypocritical for her to say that to her brother, but she realized that she did it to others because people had done it to her.
Right.
And it's like, you know, no matter the reasoning, bullying is never okay.
No.
And I remember I was talking to somebody about that, and he's like, that's a stupid message. I'm like, okay. He's like, we need bullies.
What?
Bullying builds character. I was like,
oh, okay.
Okay, and I'm somebody who's been bullied. I was
Yes.
slut-shamed in middle school. And I'm just like, did that really build my character? And when I'm sitting here, and I feel like I've gotten through a lot of the issues that came up with bullying, but did that build my character? And I'm like, I don't think it did. I feel like had I not been bullied, I probably could have grown as a person much better and much faster.
Yeah.
Had I not had to go through that shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, I am the person who I am today, not because of being bullied, but in spite of it.
Yeah.
Bullying is not there to help you be like, I'm going to make you a better person, so I'm going to call you shit.
Yeah.
It's there to, like, break you.
Yeah.
And if you happen to rebuild yourself, that's an applause to you, but it's not because I bullied you.
No.
My aim and intention was not to help you grow as a better person.
No.
It wasn't to make you tougher. It was to tear you down.
Yeah.
So if you got out of that, okay, or if you became a better person because of that, it wasn't my intention. It was just happy accidents. And some people don't.
No, some people never do.
No.
No, I absolutely agree. Bullying is not.
Yeah, bullying and abuse and all that.
Because
it's never needed.
No, and people are gonna grow regardless. Yes, hardship can sometimes help you. Like, it can help you learn new skills. You know, like, so if, like, for instance, in school, like, you're gonna struggle to study, you're gonna struggle to, like, cope with living alone, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, those are adversities that are meant to help you grow. You know what I mean? You are trying to better yourself. You are learning how to handle an influx of information. You're learning how to handle an influx of maybe tasks that you need to do. That's fine, because that's not trauma, right? But someone finding a weakness or finding something that you're already kind of insecure about and, like, digging into that and exploiting it is only trying to cause harm. And nothing, that will never ever be okay. It shouldn't ever be okay. And I feel like the person you talk to has obviously been traumatized.
He was a real fuckboy.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say, he probably, like, handled some things that he didn't handle very well, and, like, feels like he's only grown because of the trauma. But I feel like that's another coping mechanisms for people who have experienced trauma.
Yeah, I feel like the people who only believe that we need bullies and trauma and all that are bullies themselves. They need to feel like they're needed and they're doing something.
Yeah.
And they're not.
No.
I mean, there's, like, I guess you said, there's, like, adversities in life that we'll all come across.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's going to teach you things about yourself. It's going to help you grow as a person. But it's not going to beat you down and tear you apart the way that bullying and abuse does.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I need to bully people because they need to learn that the world isn't fair. Well, when you go for a job interview and you think you're really qualified for the job and you don't get it, that's like teaching you life isn't fair.
But it's not.
But it hasn't torn you apart.
No, it's never anything with the aim of inflicting pain.
Yeah.
Like, whose purpose or aim is to inflict pain is never going. It's not the same as facing a trial in life.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Because, as you said, a job, that's not, they're not, like, looking at your job interview and going, we're going to say no to this person to make them upset.
Yeah.
All they're thinking is this person is the one that's more qualified for us. Right? So that's not, the intent there is not to inflict pain. But abuse and bullying, the intent is always to inflict pain of some kind, whether it's psychological, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, all of that. So no, I agree. I think we should always stop bullies. Always. Because, like, one, no one's going to hold up for it as an adult. In the adult world, it's never going to hold up. Because there's always going to be someone bigger than you. So, like, a supervisor, a manager, a team leader who's not a bully, who's going to go, you're fired. Because they're not going to stand for that in the workplace. But also, we shouldn't be encouraging this like, idea of, like, causing pain to others. In any aspect. Yeah. Abusers will always be abusers, whether they're 4 years old and they're punching some other child, or they're 50 years old and they're a privileged white man who feels like he can hire and fire anybody he wants and is gonna not hire women of color.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, those are all with the intent of pain.
It's a question for you. So, when a kid acts a fool, we call it bullying.
Yes.
But when an adult does it, we call it harassment,
yes.
assault,
yes,
and all that. And there's obviously legal ramifications.
Yes.
Should we stop calling bullying and just call it what it is, which is assault and harassment? And abuse?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, why is it when a kid does it, it's called bullying, but when an adult does it, it's called
harassment?
Abusement.
Yeah. That's interesting. And it's probably, I would say it's probably the reason it's called different is probably the scope of the actions. So usually, as a child educator, I've seen a lot of different aspects of this. Kids usually, when they're bullying, it is like a reaction to something that's happened in their life, right? Because that's how it starts, right? It's always, trauma is the gateway to everything else. And usually what they're doing is like, I mean, they might be punching, they might be verbally assaulting, but a lot of the time that kind of stuff can be very quickly changed. Because a lot of the time they don't even realize that it's bad. Like, especially I'm talking like very young children, like if they're like 4, 5, 6, they're not really going to understand that it's mean. Like, they're just it's reactionary. But you're right. I feel like, if we just started calling it abuse and just started calling it assault.
Yeah. So, like, what I was thinking was, like, the asshole in school who pushes the other kid against the wall.
Yeah.
We call that bullying. But if
That's
you were
true.
a grown man who did it on the street for no reason and just pushed another man into the wall, we would call that assault.
You're right. I feel like we should.
Yeah. And so what exactly is the difference? Why is it that we say it's bullying, it's kid stuff, and then all of a sudden it's not?
Well, it's the same reason or people say boys will be boys.
Yeah.
I feel like the language difference was because people feel like there's a difference between a child doing it and an adult doing it.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that once you pass a certain age, you should know that those actions are wrong.
Right.
And I feel like that's probably where it stemmed from, is like, kids bully because they don't know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, again, trauma, they're reacting, whatever. Then you should be able to teach them from that point on that bullying is wrong, you shouldn't do that, whatever. But maybe we should just start calling it the same thing so that when they're adults, like, there's no language change, because language is so powerful. Like, you can very easily, like, that's why the whole idea of no means no doesn't actually work. You actually have to say yes means yes, because an absence of no, with the idea that no means no, makes people think that it means yes, right? But if you say no, yes means yes, they have to wait for a yes, a very enthusiastic yes. So I feel like if we just started calling it what it is from a young age, perhaps we wouldn't have so much trouble with people not really understanding what the limitations of assault are. Because, like, people feel like assault just means, like, being punched or pushed or tripped or whatever. But assault is so much more than that. Like, assault includes verbal, it includes emotional, and of course includes physical. I wonder why that is. I wonder why, because I guess at what age do you stop calling it bullying? Is it like 18 when they leave school?
Yeah.
Is bullying only a school thing?
Can you be bullied in like university? Or is that now assault?
Huh. I wonder if they have like a definition of bullying. I'm just curious.
I feel like when you call it bullying, you can chalk it out to like adolescent stupidity, and then you can like downplay the seriousness. But like we're all saying that bullying has real detrimental effects on people. So it's not just childhood things that you go through in life. It's just one of those things you have to go through as a kid. Blah, blah, blah.
No, it's right though. We should call it assault, because if a 14-year-old, and this is terrible, but if a 14-year-old raped somebody, we wouldn't just call that bullying.
No.
That would be rape. That would be sexual assault, or like groped somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
We would call that sexual assault because at that point they should know that's not okay.
Yeah.
So why do we just call it bullying?
Right.
So according to the dictionary.
Ooh, Oxford?
No, just dictionary.com.
Okay. It's probably run by Oxford.
Bully, yeah, probably, means a blustering, quarrelsome, overbearing person who habitually badgers and intimidates smaller or weaker people.
I.e.
Donald Trump. Archaic is a man hired to do violence. Obsolence, a pimp or procurer. Obsolete, a good friend or good fellow. Those are the 4 nouns. Verb, to bully or bullying, to act the bully towards or intimidate, domineer, or to be loudly arrogant and overbearing. That's what a bully is, according to the dictionary.
What are the synonyms? What does it say?
No, but I have thesaurus.com just right here. I write a lot, so bully. Oppressor, rascal, annoyer, harrier, hector, persecutor, pest, rowdy, ruffian, tease, tormentor, tough, antagonizer, browbeater, coercer, insolent, and intimidator. What are the synonyms for assault? Assault. Aggression, charge, incursion, invasion, offensive, onslaught, rape, strike, violation, advance, onset, storm, storming. That's assault. The synonyms. But I feel like language is so powerful, and I feel like to make sure that there's no question about it, we might as well call it assault. Because like if like a 13 or 14-year-old snaps the bra strap on a girl, say, or whoever was wearing the bra, and that person says stop, and the other person doesn't, that shouldn't be considered bullying. That should be considered assault.
Sexual harassment.
Yeah, sexual harassment.
Yeah.
That's what we should call it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even mean that like, because like some people get all like funny about, well, we can't use the word like sexual with 5-year-olds, and it's like, okay, we can still call it assault. We can still call it harassment, even if we don't add which kind it is, and that can wait till they're older and they probably truly understand what that means.
Right.
Because because it's just words. Like if you just teach a kid a word, they're gonna know what it is. Like if you say that's harassment, stop, and they go, what does that mean? You could say it means you're doing something that someone else doesn't want, and they'll go, okay. That's what a kid does. They don't go, well, that's a big word and I don't understand it. That's too big of a word. They don't do that. They just go, okay. Because that's what kids are like. It's adults that get all, well, that's too big a word. You can't use that with kids.
That's true.
I hadn't thought about it like that, though. I feel like we should just start calling it what it is.
It's funny because it's like what you said, like when do we stop using that word and transition to assault?
Yeah.
And it's like we have these imaginary timelines for people. It's like at 18, somehow this individual, without ever being taught anything, will just suddenly know all of these things. And they will know that that behavior is, illegal, or it's wrong, or that it's an offense. But I will never tell them that. They will just become 18 and the wizard will just come and clump them on their head with a magic wand, and suddenly you are all knowing.
Yeah. You suddenly get a manual.
Yep.
But it gets lost in the mail for every single person.
Yep. And it's just like, how was I supposed to know? Well, you were just, supposed to read that somewhere or find that somewhere. Or
how many laws do people not know?
Yeah.
Like there's probably nobody, I don't even think judges know every law.
No.
They still have to refer to the books. They still have to check in on
Yeah.
things. And so how can an 18-year-old who's clearly the education system doesn't favor, because they don't teach them taxes, they don't teach them anything of important, they just teach them how to put a button back on a shirt. How are they supposed to know? Especially nuances, especially social nuances. Like, we learn a lot through school and growing up and talking to people, but there's a lot of nuances that people never get, or have to be faced with and punched in the face with it literally, for them to go, oh, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very arbitrary. We have these arbitrary lines that it's as if we stop learning at 18. Or it's become shameful to learn at 18. Do you know what I mean? Like, if someone enters university at 26, goes into their first year, there's somehow something shameful about them having waited that long.
Yeah.
Or admitting that you're like 26 and going into university the first time, and people are like, oh, you mean you didn't go out of high school? Is this your second degree? And people, and it's like, no, I'm in university now, I'm a first year, and everyone's like, oh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's something shameful about admitting that you're learning once you hit this arbitrary 18 of adulthood, or 19 maybe in Ontario, when you're like legal to do everything.
Yeah. I was actually embarrassed because I was considered a mature student.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 21 when I went
Oh.
for my. I know.
Oh, a mature student at 21?
I had literally just turned 21 and the cutoff was like 20. So they're like, at 21 you're now a mature student. I'm like, oh, okay. So I was so embarrassed going into like first year Psych 1010, looking around and there's all the like teeny boppers, and I'm like, I'm so old. And I saw like some like actually mature people, people who had kids and they were in the 30s and 40s, and they're like, they're doing their degree too, so I felt a little bit better. But then they're like, oh, this is like a career change for me, and I'm like, no, I feel like shit again.
Yeah.
It's weird that we place all these kind of like important milestones on age, and like age doesn't really exist. It's like this arbitrary thing, and it's just like, why is it that at 18 you have to have done this? Why is it at 27 you have to have done this? And all of these, like, who says? Why?
And it's a big struggle. Like, so part of why I've been so like anxious and upset lately, like at just a lot of stuff, is that, so I'm just turned 24, which is like whatever, and that didn't bother me that much. But it's like, I'm 24 and engaged, which is fairly young, I think, nowadays, because a lot of people aren't getting married until like 28, 29.
When I was 24, so
Yeah, so like there's all this stuff, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, so does that mean you're going to pop out a baby in the next 2 years? Or, oh, so what's your career? Or, oh, where do you live? What's your house like? Have you moved into a house yet, or are you in an apartment? And it's like all these existential anxieties about like my age and where I am right now.
And what society tells you that you should be doing at that age.
Yeah, it's like, it's been terrible. And it's like, I keep telling myself, like, no, it's okay. And like, I would never say it to anybody else. Like, I would never say to them, oh, you're 29 and in your first year of university and you still live with your parents and you've never had a girlfriend. I would never assume that of anybody else, because I don't actually believe that it matters.
Right.
But the first thing you say to yourself and the first thing you think in a situation is what you've been conditioned to think. And so it's like, if someone says it to me, obviously the first thing I think is, they're right. I should be doing better. Why aren't I doing better? Why don't I have a career? Why don't I have a whatever? And it's so like detrimental to development of any kind. The only like numbers and milestones that should matter is like a child's developmental like psychology. Like, because like, yes, at 1 year old they're not going to be able to hold a pencil. Like, that matters. Like, that matters. And like, if by 2 years they're not walking really well, that matters because there's something else happening. But after that, like after like the literal developmental milestones, which like you can't expect a child to count up to 20 at 6 months old, like it shouldn't matter after that. Everyone like matures and changes at different rates, and society should be ready for that.
Yeah. We gotta stop comparing ourselves to everybody.
We really do. And it's like, I love and hate media for that reason, because in one way it's terrible for comparing others, or it's very easy to end up comparing yourself to others through media, because media is like a rose-tinted glass. People are only going to post the good things on media, or the things that make them feel good, because that's what it is, right? They could have been having a terrible month with anxiety, depression, and maybe suicidal thoughts, but they have curated their feed to only show you pictures where they're happy and smiling and their fitness goals are being met and they bought a house and like whatever. But at the same time, it's really good at spreading the opposite message. Like, it's really good at pushing all the other agendas. Like telling people that it's okay not to have a house yet, that showing the bad side of it. You just have to be careful.
Do that same thing as well, because you always see those stories where, like, at only 16, she is now the owner of her own company. And you're like, oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
What was I doing at 16? Or
yeah.
At 98 years young, she's run a marathon. And I'm looking at my grandma and I'm like, she couldn't do that. And then I'm like, do I need to be able to do that? Or like J-Lo, who's like, look at her at 50, running to pole and all that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's terrible because it's like both ways work, right? Like either way,
you're damned if you're doing, you're damned if you're not.
You are, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be teaching people that their journey. My favorite thing to say right now is you can't judge the journey. You yourself can't judge your journey, and nobody should be able to judge anybody else's journey because that's their business. And if someone's asked for help, if you can provide that help, provide it. And if you can't, none of your business. Like, step off. Like, back off. It's terrible. It really is. Like, we've really created this, like, society of such high expectations with very little relief. And it's the same for, activism. So I think it'd be remiss not to talk about the strike yesterday. And we talked about it a little bit on, like, the leaders who weren't there and stuff like that. But there's a big push in the feminist, I want to say the eco-social feminist movement, because they're all the same. Like, environmentalism, socialism, and feminism. They're all in the same ballpark. But there's a big push that if you're not being an activist in a specific way, that is going to all the rallies, posting on social media all the time, following all the news outlets to keep up to date with everything, and spending a bunch of money, you're not really an activist.
If you're not suffering for the cause.
If you're not suffering for the cause, yeah.
Another way in which we need to suffer.
Yeah, it's like, and that's so invalidating to every trans woman of color that ever started any movement, because they always do. Like, the LGBT movement was started by trans women of color, and the environmental movement has always been in the forefront of women of color, and I'm sure every movement can be tracked back to a woman of color, because that's just how it is. That's how it is, and we should respect that. But it's so, like, invalidating to everyone who's ever tried to change their life for the betterment of their life or society. And so I had a lot of people, so I had a very rough Thursday night. I ended up in the hospital with my father-in-law. And because they're not my details to share, we were there for 8 hours, basically. I ended up getting home around midnight, just after. But he and my partner were in the hospital for at least another hour and a half afterwards. And so I had a very rough night. It was very late. I get up at 5:40 every morning for work. And so I texted my boss and I was like, I'm not coming in until later because I need to sleep. And I'm tired and stressed out and had a very anxious day. And I was gonna miss work to go to the strike because I'm an environmentalist. I am an environmentalist. I am an environmentalist. I am an advocate. I believe in like striking for the climate. I think that it's a really good way to show.
Yeah.
Like I believe strikes are such a good way to show that people in power what is important. Especially peaceful protests. I feel like they're loud, so it kind of brings attention. But after everything that happened, it was when Kyle and I were very much like, we need to move out. We need to not be living in this house anymore because it's not a comfortable or safe place for us to be. And so I was like, I can't miss work. I need to save as much money as I can because we need to have enough money to get our rent. We need to do everything, right? But that meant that I had a lot of people asking me why I wasn't at a strike. Oh, did you go to a strike? I didn't see you post about anything. Or, what's your opinion on the strike? Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, well, I was working. And they would say to me, but I thought you were an environmentalist. Oh, and it's like, I am. I'm like, well, I thought you were a feminist. Why aren't you posting about it lately? And it's like, well, I am. And it's like this weird, like, I don't even know who started this idea. It's probably rich white people.
Probably.
But there's no one way to be an advocate.
No.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. We don't need 1 million people doing the zero plastic green living perfectly. We need everybody to do it imperfectly. Because that's the only way we'll make change, is that if everybody does something. 1 million people doing it perfectly is not enough. We need everyone to try. And like, there's this thing about like, oh no, if you're not doing A, B, C, and D, then fuck you, you're not doing it at all.
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
If you can't do it properly, just don't do it at all.
Yeah, and it's like, what? It's the same with school. It's the same with your career. It's the same with children. It's the same with everything. We've got this idea that 100% or nothing.
Yeah.
How does that work mathematically?
Yeah.
How does it work to have 1,100,000s and what would it be, like 6,900,000,000,000? I don't know. I don't know that number. Doing zero? But if we had 7 billion at 50%, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like that'd be what, 3.5 billion? 100%?
I'm just gonna transfer that.
Okay. But like, how does it make sense to only have 1 million people doing 100% rather than 7 billion people doing 50%?
That's true.
Like, how does that make any sense to anybody? So yeah, and I got asked why I wasn't at the rallies. I got asked why I didn't post about it. Oh, but I mean, your social media is full of the environmental movement. Why weren't you at a rally? Isn't it important enough not to go to work for you? And I was like, first of all, who are you to ask me?
Well, you're gonna need to like advocate for the environment because if you don't go to work, you're gonna be living in the environment.
Yeah, literally. I was just like, there's a lot of stuff, more stuff happening than just the rally. And yeah, I wanted to go. I was, up until Thursday, I was still like, maybe I should go, maybe I shouldn't. Like, should I call in sick to work and just go to the rally and enjoy it and like be amongst people who think like me? But then Thursday happened and I was like, no, I really do need to, I can't afford to miss a paycheck or like miss a portion of my paycheck. And had people going like, oh, but I thought you worked in the environment. I thought you studied the environment. Don't you care? Why should I go if you don't go? And it's like I am definitely in privilege because I am a visible white woman. So despite the fact that my upbringing isn't necessarily one of privilege, and my grandmother's from India, and I found out I'm Métis, so like I'm visibly white, so that puts me in a privileged position, and I try my best to use it effectively, to share news, to spread word, to stop things happening if I see that they are prejudiced, racist, all that stuff. But it should also not be anybody's job to educate someone else.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be, for instance, a black person shouldn't have to educate someone on what racism is.
Right.
Like, it shouldn't be their job to teach everybody. Someone who's trans shouldn't have to explain themselves and educate everybody who ever asks them what trans means. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just like this weird, like, well, if you're not going to tell me, I'm not going to learn. It's that idea. Well, if you're not going to tell me, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not going to learn. It's also not that important.
Yeah.
And it's in every aspect. Feminism as well. Like, if you're not 100% feminist 100% of the time, or just, like, openly, then you're obviously not feminist at all.
Yeah.
And that's so detrimental to every single, like, activism.
That's true. Very tough.
It is 1:30. So, we can wrap it up. What is going to be our question of the week? I know we didn't get anyone to answer our last question, but we can ask a question still.
What was your question last week?
So, to end our second episode of the Overdue podcast, our question is going to be, do you think we should have to suffer for success? That's been kind of the main theme of this episode, is different kinds of suffering, whether it's for advocacy, whether it's for school, whether it's to be considered an adult, that kind of stuff. So we'll throw it out to everybody else. Do we need to suffer to be successful? We'll see you next week, or not next week, next month. So from me, Emma,
And me, Nora.
have a good month.